Hey guys, Danny Johnson here, and today we're going to be removing the factory H pipe and installing an X pipe. So for this, I like to take the jack and put it a little bit farther back on the support beam to lift up on it, and that way I can put the jack stand towards the front. And so we want it up pretty high so we can get the X pipe or the H pipe out. And so now we're going to come around on the passenger side and do the same thing. So just make sure as you're lifting on one side it doesn't fall off of the jack stand, and make sure the jack stands are centered and firm and get them up pretty high. Next, we're going to pop the hood, and we're going to take off this 8mm bolt here to remove our battery ground or the black cable, because we'll be near the starter. Now we're going to take a 7/8 inch wrench, and we're going to remove the O2 sensors. So we're going to go ahead and put our wrench on here and turn it counterclockwise, and that will unspin these. We don't need to disconnect them. If you want to, you can. There's enough wiggle room in the wires that they can twist a little bit and just be unthreaded. So we're going to do that on both sides here. And so again, just break them loose and twist them, and you'll be able to unthread them, and soon they'll just be basically hanging up in there, and so that works just fine. Okay, so next we're going to go after these exhaust bolts with a 15mm, and so you'll need a deep socket for the stud and then an extension. So on the driver's side it's pretty straightforward. You have a pretty straight shot all the way from the bottom bolt or the top bolt. All you need is some extensions to get back far enough. And these bolts can be on pretty tight, so definitely if you have some liquid wrench or whatnot, I'd spray them and soak them. And you'll even need a breaker bar. For the driver's side, you'll need this U-joint, and so for the top, I'll show you how I have it here. We have our breaker bar, we have a pretty long extension going up, and as you can see, that U-joint comes in handy for the angle for the top bolt there, the top nut on the driver's or the passenger side. And so we can get on that one pretty easy, but a lot of people have trouble with the bottom bolt. And so what I've come up with is if you use a 15mm half-inch drive, it acts as a deep socket. So if you look at it, it's a little bit shorter, but it is kind of like a deep socket just being a half-inch drive. It's a bigger socket. So this is what I use with a U-joint, and here's what it looks like. I have my extensions going up in there, and it's perfectly fits on there, and you can see we're barely rubbing against the body, but that's where the 3/8 inch drive deep socket would actually rub against the body, and a lot of people can't get onto that bolt. So my trick is a half-inch drive, 15mm, and with that U-joint, and it works out perfect. Again, liquid wrench is your friend here on these bolts that have gotten really hot and rusted. So just soak them down if it's giving you trouble, and come back a few minutes later and break them loose. And so I just have my big breaker bar here with some extensions, and we can get right on it. So that is the way that I can get right into here. And then on the driver's side, I did have the entire stud come out with instead of the nut coming off, and that happens, and it's okay. So just let it come out, remove the entire stud with it, and a little bit later in the video we'll show you how to separate it. But as you can see, it just kind of came off here, and it's just going to come out with it, and that's fine. Next, we're going to remove the rear O2 sensors, and for this we're going to undo it at the plug. And so you're just going to push down on this tab like this, and then you're going to use a screwdriver to help kind of pry it out, and these will slide right out. For the rear bolts, it's really easy because they have a self-locking nut on the backside, so all you need is 15mm to take off the nuts. And again, you can soak them with some liquid wrench if you want to, but just take all 4 of those off, and the backside just has a little latch that flips around and self-locks it to help them unlock, so it's really nice on those. Next, you're just going to separate the mid-pipe by pulling it apart. Sometimes you can kick on the mufflers with your feet just to kind of separate it. And what I like to do is be under it here, as you can see, so I can lower it down out, and I'm just on my back I basically just kind of crawl my way out. If you have a friend, definitely have them help you get it out. But this is why the car needs to be kind of high in the front. Just be careful of the jack stands at this point too, that you don't hit them as you're walking your way out. But you can see me just kind of crab walking this out, and that's how we can get it out from underneath the car. So now the factory H pipe is removed, and if you want to take the O2s off, now is an easier way to do it outside of the car. And now for our stud that was stuck, what I like to do is actually tighten it up first with the impact gun, and once it's tightened, then loosen it, and it can usually break it free, and it comes right off. So here's a look at the X pipe all laid out, and so you can see it looks different on each side, so it is specific, which means you can't install it wrong. You have a longer side on the driver's side, and then the shorter side on the passenger side. And towards the front, the left side has the ball. The right side has that factory flat piece that has the gasket that goes up against it. So first, just lay it all out and make sure you have all the pieces and they're on the right side. Next, we're going to look at our gasket here from the factory, and so that piece in the center can fall out, so make sure you get a new gasket. It's probably a good idea to have one, but they can be reused if they're not too bad. Okay. I like to put the passenger side on first and get it tight, and it's the hardest side to seal, so once we get this one piece up in there, get it nice and squared off and firm, and get that one tight first. That's the key. Now we're going to take the O2 sensor, we're going to thread it backwards. As you can see, we're going to twist it counterclockwise so the wires kind of coil, and so now as we turn it clockwise, it will actually end up straight when it's in all the way. So again, twist it counterclockwise first and then thread it in clockwise. Okay, on the driver's side, we're going to get this one lined up pretty much straight too, and we're going to slide on these sleeves. These are just connector sleeves, and it's a really nice design. They just have bolts on them, the bottom of them, that will tighten them down. But again, you don't want it to be leaking on the manifold, so get those squared off first. Next, we're just going to bring in the back, and this comes with a different set of hardware. You're going to have a washer that goes on the bolt first, and then you're going to slide it through like this, and then you're going to bring in your other washer from the back side, and so that's going to go on the other side of it, so you have washers that are pushing against it so the bolt won't work its way through. And so after we have both washers, we're going to put a lock washer on here, and so that will help firm up this side, and then finally we're bringing in the nut to thread onto the bolt there. Okay, so this is what it should look like now on all four of those areas, so just make sure that you have the bolts on, and the key here is don't tighten any of them down all the way yet. You just want them all in place, and then you're just going to come through and tighten everything down. I like to put a floor jack under here and slightly lift. Don't lift too hard. You can crack the stock manifolds this way. So you just want to kind of lift it up to get it snug, and then make sure that everything is tightened down. Sometimes the ball side here doesn't quite seal, so you can put some RTV between it, and they even have a cup that you can, like an adapter that slides down in it sometimes if it's leaking. Next, we're going to make sure our O2 sensors are screwed in and nice and tight. And we're going to do the same for the rear O2 sensors, and so we just screwed them back in, and now we're just going to plug them in side specific by their color. And then we're just going to tighten down the clamps here at the very end, and I like these. Just make sure that they're horizontal and not hanging down, and so slide it so it's horizontal, and then just tighten them down. And so these clamps are on both sides, joining the mid pipe from where it comes down off the manifold. And so just tighten both of these down. Okay, you're also going to want to check to make sure that the O2 sensor wires aren't hanging where they're going to get caught in the drive shaft or anything like that, so you'll need to zip tie them together and away from the hot exhaust. So we went ahead and did that to the transmission mount.